Imagine waking up in the morning, already feeling defeated before the day even begins. You reach for your phone, scroll through social media, and see everyone else seemingly thriving, getting promotions, traveling the world, building businesses, living the life you dream of. And then that voice in your head kicks in. Why am I so behind? Why does everything seem easier for everyone else? Maybe I'm just not meant to succeed. Sound familiar? What if I told you that your brain is naturally wired to think this way? Studies show that 80% of our daily thoughts are negative, and 95% of them are the same repetitive thoughts from the day before. That means, day after day, most people are stuck in an endless loop of self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs without even realizing it. But here's the good news. Your brain isn't fixed. You can rewire it to work for you instead of against you. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a man named Jake who had always dreamed of becoming a motivational speaker. Ever since he was a kid, he loved inspiring people. But as he got older, self-doubt took over. Whenever he thought about getting on stage, that little voice in his head whispered, "Who would want to listen to you? You're not special. You're just an average guy." So, year after year, he put it off. Instead of pursuing his dream, he settled for a safe, mediocre job where he felt invisible. One day, Jake came across an article about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated thoughts and habits. He read about a study where two groups of people were asked to practice the piano. The first group physically played for 2 hours a day, while the second group only imagined playing. After weeks of this, scientists scanned their brains and found that both groups had developed the same neural pathways, even the ones who never touched a piano. That blew Jake's mind. If simply imagining something could change the brain, then maybe his negative thoughts weren't facts. Maybe they were just old patterns he had been repeating for years. That was the moment he decided to change. Instead of telling himself he wasn't good enough, he started repeating a different story. My voice matters. I can impact people. I was born for this. He wrote these words on sticky notes and placed them everywhere: his bathroom mirror, his car, his laptop. Every morning, instead of scrolling through social media and feeding his self-doubt, he spent 5 minutes visualizing himself on stage, speaking with confidence. At first, it felt awkward, like he was lying to himself. But the brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined experiences. And after a few months of practicing this new thought pattern, something shifted. He started taking action. He signed up for small speaking events, then bigger ones. The fear that once controlled him faded. Fast forward 2 years, and Jake is now a full-time motivational speaker, traveling the world, inspiring thousands of people. And it all started with one simple change: rewiring his brain to focus on possibilities instead of fears. Now let me ask you this. How many opportunities have you let slip away because your brain convinced you that you weren't good enough? How many times have you talked yourself out of something because you assumed you would fail? If you keep thinking the way you've always thought, you'll keep getting the results you've always gotten. Science proves that positivity isn't just wishful thinking, it physically changes the brain. A Harvard study found that people who practiced positive thinking showed increased activity in the part of the brain responsible for problem solving, creativity, and resilience. Another study showed that optimistic people live longer, have better relationships, and even make more money than those who constantly dwell on negativity. The way you think directly impacts your success, health, and overall happiness. But here's the catch. Your brain won't change on its own. You have to train it. So here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, start your mornings with one simple positive habit. It could be writing down 3 things you're grateful for, visualizing yourself achieving your biggest goal, or even just repeating a powerful affirmation like, I am capable, I am worthy, I am unstoppable. At first, it might feel small, but over time, these tiny shifts will rewire your brain. The truth is, life will always throw challenges at you. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you respond, and that response will determine whether you stay stuck or step into the life you were meant for. So, the real question is, are you ready to rewire your mind for success, failure? It's the one thing most people fear the most. The idea of putting yourself out there, trying something new, only to fall flat on your face. It's terrifying, right? But here's something that might shock you. Over 90% of startups fail. 9 out of 10 people who take the leap, invest their time, energy, and dreams into something, don't make it. If failure is that common, doesn't it make sense to embrace it rather than fear it? Because if failure is inevitable, then maybe it's not a dead end. It's a doorway. Let me tell you a story. You probably know Walt Disney as the man behind one of the most powerful brands in the world, but what you might not know is that before he created Disneyland, he was fired from a newspaper job for lacking creativity. Imagine that for a second. A man who would later become the greatest storyteller of all time was told he wasn't creative enough. After that, he started his first animation company, Reprogram Studios, and within 2 years, it went bankrupt. Most people would have given up. Most people would have taken that as a sign that they weren't good enough, that they weren't meant for success. But Walt, he saw it differently. He took everything he learned from those failures and used them as fuel. Instead of running from failure, he studied it. He figured out what went wrong, adjusted, and tried again. And that's when he created Mickey Mouse. The same man who was told he lacked creativity built an empire that has influenced every generation since. Now, think about this. What if Walt Disney had let failure stop him? What if he had listened to the people who doubted him? What if he had taken that first major setback as proof that he wasn't good enough? Would there even be Disneyland? Here's the truth. Every wildly successful person you admire has failed, probably more times than you can count. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, was cut from his high school team because his coach didn't think he was good enough. Steve Jobs was kicked out of Apple, the very company he built. Oprah Winfrey was told she wasn't fit for television. The list goes on. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, luck, or resources. It's how they handle failure. So let's bring this back to you. How do you react when you fail? Do you see it as proof that you're not good enough? Do you tell yourself, maybe I should quit, or maybe this just isn't for me? If so, you're not alone. Most people do. But here's the secret. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. A study from Northwestern University found something fascinating. They analyzed thousands of entrepreneurs, scientists, and artists, and they found that those who ultimately became successful weren't the ones who avoided failure. They were the ones who failed fast and kept going. They didn't dwell on their mistakes. They learned, adjusted, and tried again. Think about a baby learning to walk. They don't stand up perfectly on the first try. They fall. A lot. But they don't stop trying. They don't sit down and think, maybe walking isn't for me. They keep going until they get it. At what point in life do we stop allowing ourselves to fail? Let me ask you something. What's one thing you've been too afraid to try because you're scared of failing? Starting a business? Pursuing your passion? Speaking up for what you want? Now ask yourself this. What's the worst that could happen? You fail? So what? If failure is inevitable, wouldn't it be better to fail at something meaningful than to never try at all? Here's a challenge. Reframe the way you see failure. The next time you mess up, don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Ask, "What is this teaching me?" Because the people who win in life aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who keep getting back up. So, the real question is, will you let failure stop you, or will you use it as fuel? Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the energy shift? Maybe you've met someone who, without saying a word, made you feel inspired and motivated. Or maybe the opposite happened. You left a conversation feeling drained, discouraged, and just off. It wasn't random. Science proves that the energy you give is the energy you get. Here's a shocking fact. Studies show that your mood and attitude don't just affect you, they affect the people around you and even your opportunities in life. According to research from the University of California, emotions are contagious, just like a virus. If you spend time around negative people, your brain actually starts mirroring their energy. The same thing happens in reverse. When you radiate positivity, you attract positive experiences, relationships, and success. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Marcus who worked in sales. He was good at his job, but no matter how hard he worked, he kept getting passed over for promotions. Every time he walked into the office, he carried the weight of his frustration with him. His shoulders were tense, his voice was dull, and his energy screamed, "I don't want to be here." And guess what? People responded to him the same way. Clients hesitated to buy from him. His boss overlooked him for leadership roles. He was stuck in a cycle of negativity, and he didn't even realize it. One day, he met a mentor who gave him a challenge. For 1 week, change nothing about your work, just change your energy. Walk into every room with confidence. Smile, speak with enthusiasm. Instead of dreading conversations, approach them with curiosity. Marcus thought it sounded ridiculous. How could something as simple as his energy make a difference? But he had nothing to lose, so he tried it. On day 1, something interesting happened. His usual coffee shop barista, who barely acknowledged him before, struck up a conversation. By day 3, a coworker who had never paid him much attention started asking for his advice. By the end of the week, his boss pulled him aside and said, "I don't know what's changed, but I'm seeing a new energy in you. Let's talk about that promotion." Marcus hadn't learned any new skills. He hadn't worked harder. The only thing he changed was his energy. And that small shift opened doors he never even knew existed. Now think about this. What kind of energy are you bringing into the world? When you walk into a room, do you light it up or dim it down? When people talk to you, do they feel uplifted or do they feel drained? A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that leaders who express positive energy and enthusiasm are 3x more likely to inspire their teams to take action. And it's not just about work. Your energy affects your relationships, your friendships, even your health. Have you ever noticed that people with a negative mindset always seem to attract more problems? It's not a coincidence. When you focus on negativity, your brain literally filters the world through that lens. You notice more problems. You expect things to go wrong, and guess what? They do. But the opposite is also true. When you choose to see opportunities instead of obstacles, solutions instead of setbacks, everything shifts. You attract people who want to support you. You create momentum that leads to success. So let's make this personal. How do you show up every day? Do you start your morning scrolling through bad news and complaining about your day before it even begins? Or do you wake up and decide, today I bring energy, today I bring light, today I bring possibility? Here's a challenge. For the next 24 hours, be hyper-aware of your energy. Walk into every conversation with enthusiasm. Instead of complaining, find something positive to say. Smile more. Speak with confidence. See what happens. Because the truth is, the energy you give is the energy you get. And once you master that, success isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Picture this. You're sitting in traffic, running late for an important meeting. The cars ahead aren't moving. Your fingers tap impatiently on the steering wheel, and frustration builds in your chest. Your mind races. Why does this always happen to me? Of course, on the one day I'm in a hurry, the universe decides to mess with me. By the time you finally arrive, you're flustered, irritated, and already convinced the rest of the day will be a disaster. Now, take a step back. What if, instead of reacting with frustration, you took a deep breath and thought, all right, I can't change traffic, but I can use this time to listen to a podcast or mentally prepare for my meeting. The situation stays the same, but your response changes everything. Here's a shocking fact. Studies show that only 10% of our happiness is determined by external circumstances. 90% is based on how we interpret and react to those circumstances. 90% is based on how we interpret and react to those circumstances. 90% is based on how we interpret and react to those circumstances. 90% is based on how we interpret and react to those circumstances. That means most of what happens in life isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you choose to see it. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Lisa who always dreamed of running her own business. She spent years working a corporate job she didn't love, saving money, and planning for the perfect moment to quit and start fresh. And then, without warning, she was laid off. No warning, no safety net, nothing. It felt like the worst thing that could ever happen to her. For weeks, she spiraled into negativity. Why me? This isn't fair. How am I supposed to start a business when I wasn't ready for this? She let her fear paralyze her. She spent hours scrolling through job listings, thinking she had no other option. But then, one day, a mentor asked her a simple question that changed everything. What if this isn't happening to you? What if it's happening for you? That hit her like a lightning bolt. What if getting laid off wasn't the worst thing, but actually the push she needed to finally go after what she wanted? What if this moment, this thing she thought was a curse, was actually a gift? With that shift in mindset, she stopped searching for jobs she didn't want and started building the business she had always dreamed of. She took action, and within a year, she was running a successful online company, making more money than she ever had at her old job. Think about that for a second. The exact same situation, losing her job, could have either ruined her or propelled her forward. The only difference? How she chose to see it. Now, let's talk about you. How do you react when things don't go your way? Do you let frustration take over? Do you tell yourself that life is unfair? Or do you take a step back and ask, what lesson is in this? How can this situation work for me instead of against me? There's an incredible study from Yale University that proves this concept. Researchers found that people who see challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles are significantly more successful, healthier, and even live longer. Why? Because their stress levels are lower, their problem-solving skills are sharper, and they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. But here's the real question. Can you train yourself to think this way? The answer is yes. Just like you train a muscle at the gym, you can train your brain to reframe situations. Here's a challenge. For the next 48 hours, reframe every negative situation. Stuck in traffic? Use that time for something productive. A difficult client at work? See it as an opportunity to improve your patience and communication skills. Unexpected setback? Ask yourself, how can this push me towards something better? Because in the end, the most powerful people in the world aren't the ones who avoid challenges. They're the ones who know how to turn obstacles into opportunities. And once you master that, there's nothing that can stop you. Think about the last time you had an amazing idea, something you were excited about, something that made your heart race a little. Maybe it was a business idea, a fitness goal, or a personal dream you've been holding on to for years. For a moment, you felt unstoppable. But then, almost instantly, doubt crept in. What if I fail? What will people think? What if I'm not good enough? And just like that, the excitement faded, replaced by hesitation. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and that idea? It stayed exactly where it started. Just a thought. Here's a shocking statistic. 85% of people struggle with low self-confidence, and most of them never take action on their dreams because of it. That means millions of ideas, businesses, inventions, and breakthroughs never see the light of day, not because they weren't possible, but because people doubted themselves before they even tried. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man named Chris who always wanted to be a musician. He spent years writing songs, playing guitar in his bedroom, dreaming about performing in front of a crowd. But every time he thought about actually putting himself out there, he froze. What if I embarrass myself? What if people don't like my music? So he stayed in the background, watching others chase their dreams while he convinced himself he wasn't ready. One night, he went to an open mic event. He wasn't there to perform, just to listen. But then something happened. A guy got on stage who was completely off-key, missing notes left and right. Chris cringed, expecting the audience to boo him off the stage. But instead, they cheered, they clapped, they supported him. Not because he was perfect, but because he had the courage to try. That moment changed everything for Chris. He realized that the difference between people who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, it's belief. The belief that even if they fail, they'll keep going. The belief that they are worthy of chasing their dreams. The belief that their voice matters. The next week, Chris signed up for an open mic. His hands were shaking, his voice was unsteady, but he did it. And guess what? People didn't tear him down. They encouraged him. One performance turned into 10, 10 turned into 100, and today he's a professional musician living his dream. All because he stopped letting fear hold him back. Now, let me ask you this. How many opportunities have you let slip away because you doubted yourself? How many times have you told yourself, I'll start when I'm ready, only to realize that ready never comes? A Harvard study found that the number one regret of people on their deathbed isn't failure, it's never trying. It's looking back and wondering, what if? What if? Because the truth is, you will never feel fully ready. Confidence isn't something you wait for, it's something you build by taking action. Think about a time when you accomplished something that once seemed impossible. Maybe it was learning how to drive, getting your first job, or speaking in front of a crowd. At one point it terrified you, but the more you did it, the easier it became. That's because confidence is a skill, not a personality trait. And like any skill, the only way to develop it is through practice. Here's a challenge. Do something this week that scares you. It doesn't have to be massive, just something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. Speak up in a meeting. Post that video you've been hesitant about. Start that side project you've been delaying. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can take action despite the fear. Because the truth is, the people who win in life aren't the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who feel it and move forward anyway. And once you do that, nothing can hold you back. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and feeling a deep sense of excitement for the day ahead. No anxiety about what's to come, no regrets about yesterday. Just a quiet confidence that everything you need to succeed is already within you. Sounds impossible, right? But here's the truth. The way you start your day sets the tone for everything that follows. Here's a shocking fact. Over 80% of people check their phones within the first 15 minutes of waking up. That means the first thing their minds absorb isn't inspiration, purpose, or gratitude. It's emails, social media comparisons, and negativity from the news. And then they wonder why they feel stressed, unmotivated, and overwhelmed before they even step out of bed. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Jake who always felt like life was happening to him. He woke up exhausted, hit snooze 5 times, scrolled through his phone, rushed through his morning, and by the time he got to work, he was already frustrated. He thought this was normal, just part of life, but deep down, he knew something needed to change. One day, he came across an article about how successful people start their mornings. He read that some of the most influential leaders, Oprah, Elon Musk, and Tony Robbins, all have one thing in common. They control the first hour of their day. Instead of reacting to the world, they take charge of their mindset, their energy, and their focus before anything else. Jake decided to try an experiment. For 1 week, he committed to no phone for the first hour of the day. Instead, he started with 3 simple habits. Gratitude. He wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. 2. Visualization. He spent 5 minutes picturing the life he wanted. 3. Movement. He did a short workout or stretch to wake up his body. At first, it felt pointless, but after just a few days, something shifted. He noticed he was in a better mood. His energy lasted longer. He walked into work feeling in control instead of already overwhelmed. And the biggest surprise? His productivity skyrocketed. What used to take him all day to finish now took half the time. Think about that for a second. Nothing about Jake's external world changed, just the way he started his day. And that one shift transformed everything else. Now, let's talk about you. How do you start your mornings? Do you wake up feeling rushed and reactive, letting your phone and other people's demands dictate your mood? Or do you take even just 10 minutes to set the tone for a powerful day? A study from the University of Nottingham found that your willpower is strongest in the morning. That means the first decisions you make aren't just random. They shape how disciplined, focused, and positive you'll be for the rest of the day. If you start your morning with stress, you're more likely to carry that stress into everything else. But if you start with intention, you build momentum that lasts. Here's a challenge for the next 7 days. Own your morning. Before you check your phone, take a deep breath and set an intention for the day. Write down just one thing you're grateful for. Move your body, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Visualize the life you want, not just in some distant future, but today. Because the way you start your day isn't just a habit. It's a statement to yourself about the kind of life you're creating. And once you master your mornings, you'll be unstoppable.